Hey guys, so here is your walkthrough of the quiz from the other day. Hopefully you got yours back and checked yours with the answers posted in OneNote. But if you need a little extra help, I'm going to go through these step by step just so you can make sure you know how to do them. So the first one, I think just about everybody got this one right. You guys are really good about knowing that this is our slope, so that's your m. Your y-intercept is 4, so that's your b. So when I go to plug it into y equals mx plus b, I just have to put the slope in for m and the y-intercept in for 4, or I'm sorry, for b. The one thing that a lot of people forgot on this one, so negative 3/5 is our m. Don't forget to put your x next to the slope, and then your plus 4. Okay, almost everybody had that in the right setup, but I had several of you forget about that x with your negative 3/5, so be careful about that. Okay, the next one takes a little bit more work. This time we are also given a slope, so that again is your m, and it passes through the point 12, negative 9. Now this time it's not the y-intercept. Remember, if it was the y-intercept, then that number there would be a 0. Since it's not the y-intercept. Instead, this is a point that's on the line, and we can call it x1 and y1. And this time, since I have a point and a slope, I'm going to use point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 to get my equation of the line. Remember, this y and this x are going to stay as y and x. So y minus my y1 value is negative 9. So here's another common mistake I saw on this quiz. The y minus comes from the formula, but then I'm also going to plug in a negative 9. So you have to have that double negative there. Equals, my slope is 7. And then x minus, over here, we're going to get our x1, which is positive 12, so I don't have to do the double negative that time. Okay. Then I'm just going to simplify and get y by itself so that I end up in slope-intercept form again. So y, when I have my negative 9, that turns into just plus 9. Remember, the double negative becomes addition. And then on the other side, I'm going to distribute the 7. So 7 times x is 7x. 7 times negative 12 will give us a negative 84. And then to get the y by itself, I'll subtract 9. And remember, you're subtracting 9 here. I saw a couple people doing division by 9. Or subtracting it from too many places. So when I subtract 9 on this side of the equation, I'm also going to subtract 9 on the other side of the equation. When you're subtracting, we just match up the like terms. So I'm just going to put it with the 84, and that will give us just y on the left side equals, our 7x stays the same, negative 84 minus 9 would become a negative 93. A lot of people just made some sign mistakes on that one, so be really careful with your signs. Pay attention to your details, okay? All right, the next one, kind of adding on one more step. Again, we want to end up in that slope-intercept form, but this time we're just given 2 points that the line passes through. The first thing here is we're not given the slope, so we have to find slope. Remember, to find slope, we can use the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, most of you did perfectly fine with this part of it. I can label my points x1, y1, and x2, y2. And then I'm just going to plug those in. Again, the big mistake I saw here was signs, so be really careful. y2 is 4. This minus is part of the formula, and then y1 is negative 1. So make sure you do those separately. There's a subtraction sign in the formula, a negative sign on the number I'm plugging in. Over x2 is 5 minus x1 is 2. So then on the top, 4 minus a negative 1, that's like 4 plus 1, which is 5. And 5 minus 2 on the bottom is 3. So our slope is 5/3. But that's not the end of our problem. Remember, this is just the slope. Now I want to write the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Again, it's now kind of like the previous problem, like number 2, where I have the slope, and then I can pick one of my 2 points over here, doesn't matter which one, to be the x and the y value that I plug in. Most of you use the 2, negative 1, so I'll go ahead and use that one. So I'm going to do my y minus y1, I'll just write it out here, equals m times x minus x1. And I'm going to plug in all the stuff I need to plug in. So y minus the y1 value I'm going to use is -1. So again, watch that double negative. My slope, which I found already, is 5/3. And then x minus my x1 value was 2. Okay, once you get to this step, you only have to worry about one of the 2 points. So then this is going to turn into y plus 1 equals, and now I'm going to distribute my 5/3. So that's 5/3 x. When you do the 5/3 times -2, that's a positive 5/3 times a -2. So that's going to make a negative. And a lot of you did this. Write your problem off here over to the side if you have to. 5/3 times -2/1. Right? I can't do any cross canceling there, so I just multiply straight across. It'd be -10/3. So then here I'm going to have my -10/3. Right? Then, to get y by itself again, I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. And here's where we ran into a little bit of trouble with the fractions. Be careful. Over here, that just leaves y equals. You get your 5/3 x. And now again, write this off to the side if you need to kind of do it separately. So I'm doing -10/3 minus 1, right? I'm going to put that over 1, so it's a fraction. But now in order to do that subtraction, I need a common denominator. And I can use a denominator of 3. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom over here by 3, which would give us -10/3 minus 3/3. And then if I subtract across the top, now I can. Don't cross cancel when you subtract. I had a couple of people do it there. You can only do cross cancel when you're multiplying. Oops. So then -10 minus 3 would give me -13. And then I keep my denominator the same as 3. So then that means I get over here -10/3 minus 3, or I'm sorry, -10/3 minus 1 would be -13/3. And there's our equation of our line. Okay, so again, most of the issues on that problem were a lot of you found the slope and then just stopped there. After you find the slope, you still have to take that and then go find the equation of your line. And then the other issues I had on this problem were the fractions work. So again, write that off to the side and pay attention to the details and you won't miss those. All right, the next one, this one's kind of like the one we just did. So again, we're given 2 points. I'm going to go find my slope, right? So to get slope, I would do y2, which is 1, minus y1, which is 1. And on the bottom, x2 is -8, minus x1 is 7. And you should kind of notice that right away here, I get 0 on the top and -15 on the bottom. Here again, make sure you simplify your slope. Don't leave it as 0/15. 0 divided by -15 is 0. If you're not sure about that, plug it into your calculator. Your calculator will tell you 0 divided by 15 is 0. Okay, but don't leave it as 0/15. That makes your life more difficult. So now this is where I'm hoping that you realize, hey, my slope is 0. That means this is either a horizontal or vertical line, and I can do this a lot easier. Sure, you can go through the next steps of plugging it into point slope form and use 0 as your slope. But what's easier is that if I know my slope is 0, that means this is a horizontal line. Remember, there's O's in the word horizontal for the slope of 0. If I know it's a horizontal line, then that means that it's y equals some number. Right? If you know those things, now I can look at my points. Well, look at the y value of both points. It's 1. So the equation of this line is just y equals 1. Okay. If you do the point slope form and go through all of those steps, that's perfectly fine. But it's a lot faster if you can just notice, like, hey, I know this is horizontal, which is y equals. The other shortcut here is just looking at, if you have 2 points and you see that the 2 y values are exactly the same, then you can go straight to y equals 1. That's fine. That makes it a lot easier too. Okay? But recognize those little tricks. It'll make your life easier on those. All right, on the next page, we've got equation of a line from a graph. Most of you did really well on this one. This one we're just going straight to y equals mx plus b. We need to find our slope and we need to find our y-intercept, right? To find the slope of my line, I can pick 2 points on my line. So we've got that one and that one, and we're going to count our rise over run, right? So in this case, I'm going to go down 2. So my rise is -2. And then I'm going to run to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So on the bottom, +6. My b is my y-intercept, which is where it crosses the y-axis, which is right there at 4. So now I can plug those two things in, but the one thing a whole bunch of you did not do, reduce your slope. Make sure you always reduce fractions. So y equals, instead of -2/6, I can reduce that to -1/3. Don't forget your x, and then plus b, so +4. And there's the equation of our line. Okay. All right. The next two, are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Remember, and I think most of you remember, that parallel means they have the same slopes. Perpendicular means they are opposite reciprocal slopes, or we're going to flip and switch the slope. And neither would mean that they're not the same or they're not opposite reciprocals. So they're not one or the other, right? Now, in order to see the slopes, remember, you need these to be in slope-intercept form. We want it to look like y equals mx plus b so we can see what the slope is. That's the important part in these problems, right? So for instance, on this first one, y equals 6x plus 2, well, that one's already in slope-intercept form. I can see that the slope equals 6, right? So for part A, our slope is 6. For part B, that one's not in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to take, for part B, my 6x plus y equals -4, and I need to put that in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to move the 6x over to the other side of the equation. And that would leave us with y equals, notice it's -6x minus 4. So the slope for part B is -6, right? That's our slope. You can't pick out your slope straight out of the equation until you put it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so if our slope here is 6 and our slope here is -6, they're not exactly the same. That means they're not parallel. And then for perpendicular, well, they are opposites. We have a positive and a negative, but they're not reciprocals. So this one would have to be neither. Okay, not parallel, not perpendicular. Same thing on our other one over here, right? For A, it's not in slope-intercept form. So again, I'm going to take my equation and solve it for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x on both sides. That'll give us -2y equals, I'm going to put my x term first, so -3x, and then I've got a +8. And then y still is not by itself, so I'm going to divide everything by -2. So that'll give us y equals, on the slope here, a negative divided by a negative would make a +3/2 x, and then 8 divided by -2 makes a -4. So now that I've got it in y equals, or slope-intercept form, I can see that my slope is +3/2, right? So for part A, the slope is +3/2. For part B, that one is in slope-intercept form, so I can see what the slope is. It's right there, and it's -2/3. Oops. So our slope on B is -2/3. All right, so if I look at those two slopes, 3/2 and -2/3, one's positive, one's negative, so they are opposites. 3/2 and 2/3, they are reciprocals. Since those are both opposites and reciprocals, then that means that these two lines are perpendicular. Okay. Make sure you solve for y. You got to get it in slope-intercept form in order to see what the slope is. All right, number 7. We had a lot of trouble on this one. Couple key words in here. We want an equation of a line. We want it to be parallel to this line, and we need it to pass through the point -5, 1, right? Okay, so for this one, I'm going to look at this line first, that x equals 3, right? So I want it to be parallel to x equals 3. Well, the first thing to notice is that x equals 3, that's not really in slope-intercept form because there's no y there. Hopefully that's one where you realize, hey, I remember this is a vertical line. And I remember because Miss Mac keeps telling me that I need to memorize this. One way or another, you should have this memorized. X equals means it's vertical. That also means that our slope is undefined, right? You don't necessarily have to know that it's undefined for this problem, but just reminding you of those things. Okay, if that's a vertical line, well, parallel to a vertical line means I want another vertical line, right? So parallel to vertical is another vertical. Okay, so I want a new vertical line, but now I want it to pass through that point, -5, 1. Well, over here, that vertical line is x equals 3. So if I want a new vertical line, it's still x equals, but this time it's got to be x equals the x value in that point. So it's x equals -5. That's our new parallel vertical line. Okay. Again, you got to be able to recognize x equals y equals as vertical and horizontal in this stuff. That way you remember what that is, okay? Remember, it's not the value of a variable. It's actually the equation of a line because that's what it tells you it is. Okay, then we move on to functions. If I want to know if a relation is a function, we were about half and half on this question. So remember, a function means every input has one output or has its own output. You can't have an input that has two different outputs, right? So if you look at all your inputs here, we've got -2, 0, 2, 4, and 6. If you have to do the little mapping, right? -2, 0, 2, 4, and 6. Our outputs, let's see, we've got -1, that's on there twice. We've got 5 on here twice. And we have 8, right? If I draw my mapping, -2 goes to 5, 0 goes to -1, +2 also goes to 5, 4 goes to 8, and 6 goes to -1. Now notice each input only has one arrow coming from it. So each input only has one output. So that's like if I go up to my vending machine, I push my button, I get out what I want. It's okay that some of those inputs go to the same output. So like -2 and 6 both go to, oh, nope, sorry, that's wrong. -2 and +2 both go to 5. That's okay. That's like going up to a vending machine and seeing that, hey, the Cheetos are in two different places. So I can either pick -2 to get Cheetos, or I can pick +2 to get Cheetos. That's still a functioning vending machine, okay? If it's not a function, then I would have something like -2 and 2, and maybe 3 and 4, and then -2 maps to both of those. That's where it has two different outputs, so that's not a function. So, sorry, I had to sneeze. Since every input only has one output, then yes, this is a function. Okay, every input has one output. That's what makes it a function. Okay. All right, the next one, f of -5, it's what we're looking for. Remember, this just means find the y value when x equals -5, right? So find y when x equals -5. That's what that means. And remember, f of x is another way to say y. So basically, if I want f of -5, all we have to do is take that -5 and plug it in for x. So I'm going to do -7, plug in -5 for x, plus 4. -7 times -5 is +35. and then 35 plus 4 is 39. That's your answer. All you're doing is substituting in that number that's in the parentheses for the x that's in the equation. Next one, we go kind of half and half again on this one. A lot of you did just fine. Some of you weren't quite sure. I got a lot of weird answers on this one, but this one's looking for f of 10, but this time I'm using a graph to find it. So remember that 10, that's your x value, and then you want to know what does the y value that goes with that x equal. So here's my x equals 10, right? I'm going to take that spot and go along the y direction until I get to my function. And then that is at -2. So f of 10 just equals -2. Right? I'm not trying to write the equation of the line or anything here. It just says find that value. That is a value that you're looking for, right? So look for the spot on the graph where x equals 10 and then find that y value. All right, and the last one, if you wanted to see the bonus, I think I had one person almost get it completely right. A couple of you had a couple good tries. We want to write the equation of the line in standard form is kind of the catch here. The first part of this is pretty simple. Our slope is 3/4. It passes through the point 0, 6. I'm going to notice, sorry, I lost my window. I'm going to notice on this one that my x value is 0, right? If that x value is 0 in a point, then that means that this is our y-intercept, okay? So if x is 0, that means that this other number is our y-intercept. So now I've got my b, and I've got my m, so I can do y equals 3/4 is my slope, x, and then plus 6 for my y-intercept. Several of you got that part. Great job. Okay, then to put it into standard form, I'm going to take that equation, and remember standard form is ax plus by equals c. So I want to move the x term over to the left, so I'm going to subtract 3/4 x on both sides. That will give me -3/4 x, and then I've got a positive y, those are gone, whoops, equals 6. And then the other catch here is for standard form, I want my first term to be positive, and also I can't have any fractions. So I'm going to take this whole equation and I'm going to multiply it by -4. That way I get rid of my denominator and I make that first term positive. So then that means my standard form, -4 times -3/4 would give me a positive 3x. -4 times y would give me a -4y equals -4 times 6 gives us -24. So that is our standard form of that equation. Okay, hope this helps. Again, feel free to send me some messages on Google Chat if you guys need anything, and I will see you guys on Friday.